Hey, this is your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle, and I don't suck, and neither does the Piffles podcast. But anyone who plays the Riders, they suck. Oh, it's true. It's damn true.
Let's go, Rider Nation.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Yeah, here we go. It's a feeling now. Get 'em high, get 'em low, 'cause we're dealing now. Everybody's giving it all they got, 'cause we're ready.
Joining us this week for a special edition of the Piffles podcast. We couldn't think of a better person to join us during Labor Day week than the commissioner of the CFL himself, Mr. Randy Ambroise. Commissioner, thanks for joining us.
Guys, it's great to be with you. I should tell you that my wife and our youngest daughter were having dinner earlier, and we were talking about the podcast. And of course, my youngest daughter had lots of questions, and we did some research. So, Niels Piffles Taylor, World War I veteran and pilot and hero. And we got excited. All of us got excited at the thought of joining the show tonight. So thanks to all of you, and thanks for the great work you do for CFL fans.
Well, geez, if you're that prepared, I'm not sure I'm prepared as prepared as you are. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming, Commissioner. I think we can cut it right there.
Yeah. Well, we'll start off, Randy, with a little bit of sad news in the CFL community this week. Learning that Rich Stubler passed away. You were with him in Edmonton in the early 90s when you were a player. He was defensive coordinator. You guys won a Grey Cup together. Just a couple words, Randy, on Rich Stubler and what it was like going up against his defense in practice.
Well, first of all, he was a remarkable man in addition to being a spectacular football coach. And I got to know Rich really well personally, and we had a relationship, going back to those days in the late 80s, early 90s. And we stayed in touch, on and off over these many, many years. In fact, I just talked to Rich a short while ago. So it's a sad loss. But, he was a once in a generation defensive mind. He had his ability to scheme and prepare his defense to be successful. And I saw him do amazing things. He did amazing things throughout his career, and it's a real loss. And we of course send our condolences to Rich, his family, and he will forever live in our hearts.
Now, what's something that you can tell us about him that the fans may not know about him?
Well, I mean, there's just so many things. He was a fun guy. He loved his players. I think as much as anything, I recall back in my Edmonton days, and at that time he had John Mandrich. Of course, we lost John a long time ago now, and he had Brett Williams. He had Stuart Hill. I mean, he was coaching a remarkable group. And the thing is, he loved his guys. He loved his veteran players. He loved being with them. And it always seemed to us in the offensive line room, it always seemed that they were having more fun in the defensive room than we were having in the offensive room. But again, just a guy that loved his players, and he was always with them. He wasn't inclined to sit in the coach's room. He was always out in the locker room, hanging out with the guys. And you know what he was? He was a guy that loved the game of football, and he loved the players who played the game. I think that's one of my fondest memories of Coach Stubler.
Now, you mentioned kind of the fun side of things. That kind of leads us into the next segment here. You got to play on both sides of the Battle of Alberta and Labor Day. You got to play in the Battle of the QEW. What's Labor Day like as we lead into Labor Day weekend here? As a player on kind of all sides of those rivalries, and how does it compare to a regular season game?
Well, it's a great question, and what's interesting is I think in my rookie season in 1985, I don't think I really understood it. And then once you play in it once, what you realize is that there's a lot of intensity, especially if you're a young player, from the preseason games, and then there's an amp up in intensity in the regular season games, but when Labor Day hits, the league hits yet another level of intensity, because now you're into that stretch drive, and it really, Labor Day kicks off that second season in the CFL, and there is, without a doubt, there's an intensity. And then, of course, when you add to it the rivalries, you've Edmonton and Calgary, that goes back a long ways. Look, interestingly enough, this weekend, given what happened in Edmonton on Sunday night, there's a lot of significance to this game in Calgary on Monday. And then I played, of course, in Toronto, and going into Hamilton and playing against Mike Walker and Grover Covington. I mean, they were incredibly talented. But of course, you went into what was then Old Iverwin Stadium, and there was such an intensity to their crowd. And again, it was Labor Day, and it was the kickoff of the second season, and everything seemed to be just that much more important. So, boy, it's besides Grey Cup weekend, it's one of maybe the funnest weekend of the season for all of us. And of course, in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, you have this phenomenal rivalry between the Riders and the Bombers. And you've got the Riders are coming off a great win. They're playing at home, and they're playing in front of a huge, very partisan, I think we can say, very partisan, fan base at Mosaic, and the Bombers are coming in playing very well. So look, all of the games, and then we shouldn't discount the fact that BC's going to Montreal this weekend, and that's going to be an important game, important for both teams. I think this is just set up to be one of the greatest Labor Day weekends in CFL history. And I personally, I've got great memories dating back to being a kid, playing in many of them, and now watching what'll happen this weekend. I'm looking forward to watching what'll happen this weekend. It should be spectacular.
Well, one thing about the games this year, there seems to be a lot more parity than there has been in past years. Like you alluded to, there's a Edmonton with a 2-9 record right now, still has a shot for the playoffs, but it's not one of those fluke shots. They're playing tight. Calgary's playing tight. Even the teams in the East are playing everyone tight. What do you think is bringing that this year? What's causing that, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Well, first of all, you got to give all the credit to the teams. You got to give the credit to the coaches, give the credit to our general managers and team presidents. Look, I think when we go back a little bit, the changes that we made when we did our game review last year, and some of the changes we made, to the kicking game, moving the ball a little further upfield on kickoffs and kickoff returns, of course, and punts return. I think we're putting the ball in a better offensive position to start drives on. It's opening up the field for offensive coordinators. Look, we've got some great young quarterbacks. I think there's a real story here in this league, as sad as it is always to see a veteran player or any player get injured. But we're seeing some amazing young quarterbacks emerging in our league, and that's exciting. I could go on and on. Look, our brand of football is, I know I don't have to convince you, it's fun, fast, and entertaining. That's why we watch it. And one of the reasons why we love the league as much as we all do is that it is all three phases of the game. It's offense, defense, and special teams. So one of the reasons, to answer your question, why, is special teams have been fantastic this year. There's been a lot of returns for touchdowns. When the ball is being exchanged in our league, it's a real play. It's a real part of the game, and it's just adding so much value to the fan experience. So again, just so many. There's lots of good reasons. Great players, great coaching, and our game is built to be fun, fast, and entertaining, and it's delivering on that.
Randy, I know that you knew this question was going to pop up. We got to talk a little bit about Genius Sports, and specifically the stats package that's available online. My question right now on this is this the system that we have for the rest of the season, where we will get the game stats, but we won't have updated league leaders until the following Monday?
The system is being worked on. Look, I'm going to take a step back, Alex, if you don't mind, and just say, for the record, it's been disappointing and frustrating that we haven't the system wasn't up and running the way all of you deserved from game one. No doubt about it, and we shouldn't make excuses and hide from that, and we're not. But Genius has been hard at work, and they made a huge commitment to what is in place now is a much more stable system, and it's operating very well. Look, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be adding historical stats to the package. Each week, we're going to see more and more. In fact, that's going to be the theme. Every week, we're going to see more and more of the stats package available to our fans and to the media. And it'll get better and better. Again, very disappointing. But on the other side of that, Alex, it is an investment in our future. And a question I often get asked is, why didn't you hang on to the old system until this one was up and running? And because we wanted to make a long-term commitment to getting a really robust stats system in place, but it's much more than that. And to be fair, it's not that the old system wasn't any good. The old system had a lot of functionality, but the package we're getting from Genius has enormous functionality. And it's also going to enable new features. It's going to play a big role in our broadcast augmentation strategy, which Genius is going to be a big part of. So again, disappointment in the short term. It's going to get better week in and week out as we go along. But the long term is going to be that much better because the system has just so many more capabilities. And in a world where we're not competing against ourselves, we're competing against the entire world of sports. We needed to take a big leap forward in what we're going to be able to present to our great fans. And that's what the Genius system is going to be able to do.
Secondary question off this, and I don't know the answer to this. When I want to look at, say, the top receivers just on the Saskatchewan Roughriders this year, on their webpage, it doesn't even exist. There's nothing there. Is that kind of tied in with Genius, or are teams kind of on their own for something like that?
No, all of that is tied into the same stat system. And again, look, it's not the way it should be. And it's got to get better. And we've talking to the highest levels of Genius executive every week, and they're pressing the gas pedal to make improvements. Look, again, what you can expect, Alex, is that every week from here through to Grey Cup, you're going to see improvements week in and week out. More features are going to be made available. One thing they're working hard on is our historical stats package. Many of our fans really do want to see kind of that historical perspective. They're working hard on that. And the goal is to be as close to the full package being done by the time we get the Grey Cup. But again, I don't want anyone to think we're being glib or we're being dismissive. It's been disappointing, but again, they're working hard at it. And it's going to give us a much better platform going forward.
Now, we've seen a huge push in the Canadian market and in the CFL in regards to single game betting and fantasy football and all of that aspect. How much of that plays into what Genius is going to offer long term, and how much of their plan is aimed in that direction at the kind of the single game betting stuff and sports betting in general?
Well, it is one of their core capabilities. And it was, without a doubt, one of the things that attracted us to them, is that as the legislation changed in Canada, that Genius had experience all around the world with some of the biggest leagues in all of sports. So without a doubt, that's something they do very well. And they know that business incredibly well. So all of this is all tied together. It's all part of a big picture, which is what our Board of Governors supported, is the idea that with a world-class partner like Genius, they can take us to places that we might not have been able to go on our own. And even though we've stumbled here a little, I think I can still say with great confidence, they are the right partner for us, and they're going to make a big difference. Look, in the end, what it really is about is fan engagement. And if you look at some of what we announced last week, You know, we're seeing great success on the field. We talked about that already, but we're seeing huge success off the field. We're seeing a huge growth in our social media presence. We're seeing a lot of engagement on our social platforms. We're seeing participation in our free-to-play game environment. All of this is coming kind of part of the Genius ecosystem. And as single game wagering becomes more of a factor, look, what we never want anyone to bet their meal, their grocery money or their rent money or their mortgage money on a football game. We never want that. But to see tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of fans have a small wager on a game to make it more fun, that we like a lot. And we're hoping that Genius will, and we know that Genius will play a big role in helping us get there.
Now, switching on to another topic that every CFL fan thinks the refs are against them. How do you find the officiating this year? Do you find it consistent? Do you how do you guys, I guess, evaluate your officials?
Well, the officials are evaluated every week, and Darren Hackwood and Greg Dick, who is the head of our football operations group, and Darren Hackwood, who's the head of our officiating crew, they evaluate every official in every game. Every play gets scored. And look, I think our officials in the CFL do a remarkably good job. And we shouldn't think, and sometimes that's one of the beauties of fans is we're very, and I'm a fan as well, by the way, we're all very, we have short memories. We think we're the only place in the world where officials don't make the perfect calls all the time. I think we can look around the world of sports and acknowledge that officials have a tough time, getting it right 100% of the time in every league around the world. But we tend to think ours struggle more. I actually think our officials are doing a remarkably good job, and I'm proud of them. But I'll tell you one thing I'm most proud of. One of the things that Darren and Greg did from day one is that they made a decision to not pretend we were perfect. And what they do every week is they send a report out to the teams where there were mistakes made. And they do a mea culpa with the teams. And they do that because it's hard to tell somebody that you're doing it all right when they know you're not. And if you never admit that you made a mistake, you'll have no credibility for the rest. And Greg and Darren have created a culture around improvement. So one of the things they do is each official gets a report card. They know where they stand. Of course, we shorten the bench. We start the season with a much bigger number of officials. And as the season goes along, those whose scores are lower get dropped off. Those whose scores are better continue to officiating all the way to Grey Cup, when our best officials are the ones that get to officiate in the Grey Cup game. So look, this is always going to be a topic for discussion, and it's always going to be a work in progress. But I'd say we should all be very proud of the men and women that are officials in the Canadian Football League. I think they do a remarkably good job. They're not perfect, but they work very hard at their craft, and we are very pleased with them. And I can say personally, I'm very proud to be associated with this group.
Now, I know we here at Piffles have spent years trying to promote the fact that Andre Proulx is probably the best ref in the CFL, despite what the majority of Rider fans think. We're working to change that image here. But you mentioned the report that goes out to teams. Has there ever been any thought about, because I know the league does it, the NBA, does it with their last 2-minute report. Has there ever been any thought from the CFL about fans getting kind of a look at some of those mistakes and seeing where these mistakes might be happening? Or is that kind of off the table?
Yeah. Well, again, one of the things I'm going to give a lot of credit to Greg Dick and Darren is they're always thinking about what's next. In fact, I would say of the entire league, it's one of the things that I think is again, something that I'm exceptionally proud of. Is nobody is complacent. Nobody is thinking that we got it all figured out. Everyone is always thinking about what's next. What's the next innovation? What's the next change? So look, we have not talked about that. Certainly, I haven't spoken with Greg and Darren about that. it's something that that we should put on the radar and ask ourselves what would the value of that be, and will it help us? Look, in the end, the goal of reporting to the teams where we have made mistakes is to build a tight relationship with our coaches and our players so that they know that we are in a constant state of improvement. And there's a quality about that exercise that I want to make sure we maintain.
Randy, you mentioned talking about Genius Sports, about fan engagement. The report that came out last week, halfway through the year, talking about fan engagement growing in places like Toronto, BC, Montreal, especially with younger audiences. Can you take us into that a little bit and just explain what we're seeing in terms of growth in these markets?
Yeah, well, it's been. I don't know if you had an opportunity to watch Friday night's game, the Calgary-Toronto game, but I got to tell you something. It was just such an amazing atmosphere and big crowd at BMO Field. Exactly what all of us want. We want to turn on. We want to turn on our. When we're tuning into TSN, we just want to see that big old crowd at BMO. And that's what we got. And then in addition to a great crowd and great energy, we were treated to an exceptional game of football. I mean, those two quarterbacks just lit it up for us. And there were great performances all over the field. So, I think it's a real shout out to what's been happening in Toronto. A big shout out to Bill Manning and to Chris Schufeld and to Michael Clements and the great coaching staff and great players. And as I said earlier, this wonderful young quarterback who's doing great things. But it doesn't end there. Look, what's happened in Montreal since Pierre-Karl Palado. I think one of the great happenings in our league this year, when we do a retrospective, was the day we announced that Pierre-Karl Palado is the new owner of the Montreal Alouettes. And there's a fantastic energy in Montreal around Mr. Palado and the commitment he's made, the long-term commitment he's made to the Alouettes. And, they have performed incredibly well. And then the undeniable impact that Amar Doman is having in BC and the energy that we're seeing there. So, what was not that long ago, a story that you might have been asking me is, Commissioner, what are you going to do about your major markets? Today, as we reported last week, and you've been watching with your own eyes, our three major markets are becoming a strength of ours. And that's really driving, significant success in fan growth. Look, one of the biggest successes we've had this year is the 25 to 52 demographic is so critical for our key stakeholders, for our sponsors and advertisers. And that's up 29% year over year. What it tells us is that a lot of the work we're doing behind the scenes, a lot of the work we're doing on these fan engagement strategies have been working. And it's what our fans like. And I love you guys. And I know, the same thing I hear over and over again, you've probably talked about, and is the league's got to do more marketing. Well, this era of marketing is all done through these social engagement strategies. And I'm proud to say that it's working. And then, of course, we add, what is our brand? And fun, fast, and entertaining. That's what we are in the Canadian Football League. And I think you would agree, we've been delivering that week in and week out. And it's a very exciting time for us.
You mentioned we've had some fantastic games this year, which goes to what we originally talked about, just the game experience going up and play going up this year. Fan engagement growing in major markets, but that does come with a couple markets kind of slowing down a little bit. I think we can all agree that Edmonton had their market slow down a little bit in terms of people going to games just because of the losing streak. But now that that's over, hopefully that kind of gets pushed aside and the fans start going back there. But what about a place like Calgary? They've had such a great team for the last 20 years, and now they have one, bad year, I guess. And it seems like there's a lot of issues in Calgary.
Well, okay, you know what? Look, I know they're not satisfied with where they are, and there is work to be done. And I spent time just last week talking to John Bean. John is the CEO of Calgary Sports and Entertainment. He's just a tremendous partner. And Jay McNeil and John Huffnagel. I talk to them, all the time. I think there's a few things. Number one is they have been really good for a long time, and it has been a tougher season for them than Stamps fans are used to. Like, one of the issues that we talk about is their stadium's not. It's certainly not Mosaic. If you want to do a direct comparison, but they're hard at work on a lot of strategies. I've been so impressed with Jay McNeil, and you're always impressed with John Huffnagel. Look, I'm a real believer in Calgary sports and entertainment, and I know they're going to do the work to make sure that that they get that franchise to where they want it to be and where we all want it to be. And as it relates to Edmonton, you know what? It was called the City of Champions for a lot of good reasons, but that city's got a lot of heart, and there's a lot of football fans in that city that I think want to be part of what they're building there. And now Rick Lawlisher has stepped in. Super happy to have Rick, take this short-term position to really kind of get the ship heading in the right direction. So, everywhere I look around the league, I think the truth is there's work to be done. We are not anywhere close to where we want to be. But a lot of the heavy lifting that we've done over the past, 3, 4, 5, and 6 years, a lot of that heavy lifting is starting to pay off now. And it's one of the many reasons why we're excited about the future that we're building.
Now, we saw that turf traditions line dropped on Monday. I'm pretty sure I speak for most CFL fans when I say retro looks are always a good look, and we want to see more of it. We saw Jalen Hurts show up this past week looking pretty good in that Birmingham Barracudas jersey. Any chance we see a U.S. expansion merch line at some time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a off the cuff answer. I think what the teams are doing a really good job of, and in partnership with New Era, is really thinking about again that fun, fast, and entertaining mantra. How do we create in every element of our existence? How do we create compelling reasons for people to be our fans? And if it's through merchandise, and whether that be new looks or old looks, it's to make being a CFL fan fun, to make it fast, and to make it entertaining. And I'll tell you, one of Craig Reynolds, who I know you all know very well, he's such a good partner to the league. Greg Ewell, their league governor. The riders are always thinking about how to advance their strategy to make them as a big a part of the community as they can possibly be, and to be a place where people want to be, and they want to be connected to those great riders. And we're seeing that all across the country. So I can't speak specifically to retro jerseys. What I can tell you is that the work that's being done by our presidents is compelling. This is a remarkable group, and it's the best ownership we've had in the Canadian Football League ever. From Pierre-Carl Palado in Montreal, John Ruddy and Roger Greenberg in Ottawa, two of the most remarkable men you'll ever meet. What's happening in Toronto with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, Bob Young, Scott Mitchell, and Stelco in Hamilton. What Winnipeg is doing, which, by the way, I know you guys aren't necessarily going to give a big shout out to the Bombers, but what the Bombers and Wade Miller are doing. Yeah, sorry. Saskatchewan, of course, I don't need to convince you. Edmonton, is going to go through their efforts. Calgary Sports and Entertainment, phenomenal. And now Amar Doman. So, look, I think we've got the right group of people. We've got a huge commitment across the entire country. And, of course, I'm wearing tonight, I don't know if you can tell, I'm wearing my Touchdown Atlantic shirt. And we saw another example of just how big an impact we can have on the Atlantic region. And we're deep into conversations in Atlantic, Canada, about how we might bring our great game, all the way to the East Coast and be a truly, coast to coast Canadian Football League.
Do you have our notes in front of you? Because that was where I was going to next. Speaking Touchdown Atlantic, obviously, you talk about your 9 great owners. I know you're hoping for a 10th. Is there ever going to be a team in Halifax? And if so, can we not call it the Atlantic Schooners? I think the name is cursed.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm told they're undefeated, so I don't know how cursed they are. as I think, in fact, I believe at Grey Cup, I often see Atlantic Schooners undefeated T-shirts and sweatshirts. Look, what I can say is this. We've had a big commitment from our Board of Governors to make expansion a priority. We really would like to see expansion into, bless you, by the way, in Atlantic Canada. We are talking to a number of potential owners. We're having a very active discussion in the region with a lot of the key stakeholders, and there is an appetite to have the CFL move its 10th franchise into that market. So the work is being done. It's a little bit like I feel like we've been getting a lot of first downs, and now we're in the red zone. And I say that without I think I say that carefully. Like we have moved things down the field beautifully. But as you know, when you're down by 5 points and the clock is ticking, being in the red zone isn't enough. You have to actually score for it to count. And
So you have seen Rider games this year.
we have but we have good reason for optimism, but there's still some work to be done. But there is also good reason to feel good about that possibility.
What about other cities? Is there a potential chance at seeing a touchdown Victoria game, a touchdown Saskatoon, touchdown Quebec City, leading into a potential team in another market?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, you're now taking a page out of my playbook. Look, we are actively talking about and thinking about Quebec City as a potential CFL market, and is that a possibility? And we will have a time here sometime this fall, to start a conversation in Quebec City. It's one that we're looking forward to, and the Lions and Amar Doman. Amar Doman's was born and raised on Vancouver Island. And he's got a great passion for Victoria and the whole island, by the way. And they're talking about potentially bringing a game to Victoria, to sharing the CFL with another part of the great province of British Columbia. So the answer is all of these things the wheels are in motion to look at all of them. And that's, a big part of what's going to go on at the league office this fall in collaboration with the teams is where do we go next? But so we have our priority around our expansion, plans, and then we have where do we share the game next? We're talking to cities like London, Ontario. They hosted the Vanier Cup last year and had an opportunity to visit with a number of their key stakeholders, and they made it clear they would love to see us bring a CFL game to London. So lots of good markets out there and opportunities for us to share our game.
Mentioned the Vanier Cup. Is there any chance of the Vanier Cup and Grey Cup being together on the same weekend in the same venue again? Is there discussions on that?
Well, it's a great question, Alex, but we should just to think about where we want to go from here. One of the reasons why expansion is so exciting for us is that it would allow us to play our 18 games in 19 weeks rather than taking 21. That would push our Grey Cup to the first weekend in November rather than the third weekend. And of course, that would make it almost impossible for for Canadian college football to play their season in order to align themselves with a, let's say end of first weekend of November Vanier Cup. So while it would be magnificent to do it, and we're such big supporters of our Canadian college football system and our partners and our junior partners, but trying to line those two up would be very difficult because we're trying to go earlier. We'd like to see more of our games in the summer, more of our games played from, season kickoff in early June through Labor Day, because that's really good for the league. And playing Grey Cup earlier in November would be really good for the CFL. So the two are not necessarily aligned, but that doesn't mean we can't be big supporters of Vanier Cup.
Now, we thought we'd end this interview with a nice little game of this or that. I'm sure you've seen these kind of questions before, but we're going to throw you a couple of options. You just tell us which one of the two would be your your go-to? Starting off, iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Hot dogs or hamburgers?
Hamburgers.
Cheesies or Cheetos?
Oh, Cheetos.
Camping or glamping?
Oh, glamping. And by the way, Old Dutch would be my answer to the Cheetos.
I
Oh.
called it, guys. I said it.
Cookies or cake?
Cake.
And spaghetti with or without meatballs?
Oh, with meatballs for sure. Look at me.
You don't be coming off.
I'm an offensive lineman. Like, you never miss an opportunity to have meatballs.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you're an offensive lineman at heart. You know how to get that body frame, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, Mr. Commissioner, thank you so much for making time for us. I know how busy your schedule is. So to take time for us and to speak to Rider fans watching this, we really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for some really informative stuff here, and being honest about a lot of the questions here, especially about Genius Sports, about how the league is looking to continue improving that every single week. Thank you for your time, and we can't wait to see you again.
Guys, looking forward to it. And I'm going to be, by the way, I'm going to be in Regina this weekend for the Sunday game. So if you're around, let's see if we can't hook up and say hello.
We're all by
We'll
the
see you there.
steps on the way onto the field, so you can't miss. Well, you can't miss
All
me.
right.
I'm right there.
Guys, you do a great job. Thanks very much, and keep up the good work.
The